Welcome to the kind of woman power that sustained our grandmothers for 72 years in their struggle to get the right to vote. Welcome to the new wave of feminism. Welcome to each other. Welcome home.
1950s Housewife to women's activist, Betty Friedan. The happy housewife heroine was a woman who existed purely through image. She was the American dream, flawless and without worry.
Young American women set aside their potential ambitions of education and careers and focused primarily on getting married and having children.
This woman was hardly an individual, exacting her image to that of an advertisement in a magazine. She lived through her husband, her children, and was content in doing nothing but nurturing them and the place they lived. She could not work because that was her husband's place, and she would only be looked down upon. She was to take pride in her femininity, the feminine mystique, as it were. In the hearts of the housewives who sat at home every day, living unfulfilled lives, they knew they were unhappy. The woman felt incomplete and relatively worthless. She was a mother and a wife, but what else? Suddenly the question rose, is this it?
However, the housewife could not vocalize her discontent and refused to recognize the problem because it was not normal, and it was not her place to wish for more than her role as a woman. She felt she was different because magazines and articles promoted a happy, satisfied, and completely content woman.
Billboards in popular women's magazines advertised household items being operated by a happy, young, married woman in heels, pearls, and an apron.
This was the image that women all over America looked up to and wanted, and what every American woman thought she had to be. The ultimate discontent in the hearts of women was named as, by Betty Friedan, the problem that has no name, and so it was.
Women went about their daily lives plagued with discontent, feeling empty but not knowing why or how, and were too afraid to show their apprehension, and denied the problem in general.
They were ashamed because all their lives they were told they should be proud of their roles as women, until Betty Friedan came about.
Betty Friedan was a leading figure of the second wave of the women's liberation movement. She was a strong leader of all aspects of the movement, having been oppressed herself despite her wide range of studies. She is often credited with sparking the movement with her introduction of the feminine mystique.
The Feminine Mystique was written by Betty Friedan in 1963, originally created to appeal to the middle-class women of the time.
The image in the book itself portrayed an unspoken truth within the minds of housewives and women in America altogether. The part that was not happy and not content with their suppressed role in society.
Thousands of women responded to the book, and the Feminine Mystique was a key to unlocking the chains of silence which bound women since the 1920s. According to Friedan's obituary in the New York Times, it ignited the contemporary women's movement in 1963.
It helped women to realize that they were not alone in their discontent and should not be ashamed that they were not happy. Their problems suddenly had a name in a way, for they knew what it was.
However, not all women wanted to change. Despite the thousands of positive responses to the book, many women were still apprehensive.
The media played a key role in influencing their decisions. Billboards, magazines, and newspapers openly displayed their opposition to the movement and Betty Friedan herself.
I still can see that Washington Post article, Washington Post, and it had a picture of Betty Friedan at her most angry, side view with her finger in the air, just angry look on her face, and this beautiful young woman on the other side, and the headline was, "Who would you choose?" So that's how the media fed into criticizing the movement, making fun of the movement.
Despite the negativity that flowed from the media, the movement still stood strong, and thousands of women marched behind Betty Friedan for change.
With the newfound enlightenment, the feminine mystique led to the women's liberation movement.
The women's liberation movement of the 1960s was a mass movement of America, which ignited in 1963, which led to the equality of women in society, the workplace, and legal transaction.
It is often credited as the first mass movement for women. However, 4 decades earlier, during the first women's liberation movement, the flappers of the 1920s had already made a sizable dent in the female public image. They made it possible for women to lighten the socially acceptable standard on attire, to be seen in public with men in casual manners, and most importantly, began the movement which set into place the 19th Amendment, women's right to vote.
However, during World War II, The defiant woman who originated from the Flappers, Rosie the Riveter, lost all of her heightened social standards after the war, when the men who went to fight came home. Decades later, in the 60s, the American women, still in the homes of their husbands, having children as an occupation, and having no social standards equivalent to men, felt the fervor their mothers before them had felt.
Thus, with the help of the feminine mystique in 1963, the second wave of the women's liberation movement sparked into life. It was unlike any movement seen in the nation before, the crowd of supporters being more diverse than that of any other representative assembly, and certainly more moving and demanding of response than any other. Just a few decades before its occurrence, it would have been impossible.
With passion and vigor, following the attitude of the feminine mystique, Betty Friedan led the movement, calling upon the nation to follow her in her footsteps. She could relate to the women who were stuck in the suburbs, and all women who had been suppressed by men.
Betty Friedan was active from the start, leading and organizing rallies such as the First National Women's Conference in Houston, Texas in 1977.
From the very beginning of the movement, Betty Friedan contributed to it greatly. From 1963 and the Equal Pay Act to the Time Is Now organization of 1966, to 1970s Sisterhood is Powerful, all the way to the late 70s apparent cultural infliction upon every layer of society. Betty Friedan was active in the movement.
The women's liberation movement helped the progression of women in society. It influenced the enactment of the 1970s Equal Rights Amendment in most states, despite its failure to be ratified in the Constitution. The movement also helped women to fulfill their roles not only as a wife and a mother, but as a citizen of the United States.
Because of the movement and its structure based on organizations to support the movement, women today can now take advantage of equality in society, equal pay, and equal rights.
The National Organization for Women, created in 1966 by Betty Friedan and Polly Murray, encouraged women to be more active in the movement and move the nation into supporting and joining the cause.
As a result of NOW and organizations alike, the movement was a huge success in obtaining true equity among Americans.
With the passing of bills such as the Equal Pay Act of 1963, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and the proposal of the Equal Rights Amendment, women quickly obtained the rights and lifestyle they desired.
All those in favor, will you please rise?
Although the Equal Rights Amendment has yet to be ratified, women still enjoy all the rights the bill would ensure, because the movement changed Western culture and the common attitude towards women.
Today, women are free to have abortions, as decided in the Roe v. Wade case in 1973, and use contraceptive methods such as birth control made available in 1961. They have careers equal to men, as established and allowed with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and are seen as equal in rights, opportunity, and society.
The movement and the feminine mystique forever altered American culture. The effects can still be seen today, as the balance of men and women in society continues to equalize, and a woman's role and value continues to increase.
Women have now broken the glass ceiling that once contained them, reaching high positions of power such as high-priced CEOs and political figures.
Since the introduction of women's suffrage, more than 200 women have served in Congress, and thousands of women have become involved in political and social affairs.
Women can now be doctors, lawyers, decorated army leaders, war heroes, and still go home and be a mother and a wife. No longer does a woman have to serve her husband, but rather she works beside him.
Because of Betty Friedan's boldness and courage with her publication of The Feminine Mystique, and further, her strength and drive as a leader of the movement, women are now free to set their standards high and achieve more than what was ever imaginable just years before The Feminine Mystique's publication.
Her dream lives on in the hearts of thousands of women today, and the feminine mystique will never be forgotten.
This is, in the biggest sense, real politics, human politics, American politics, a new kind of politics. It will, what happens in the bedroom will be affected by it. The kind of orgasms women are able, and men too, to have will be affected by it. But that's not where the action is, you see. And the action is to change society, to restructure society,